other things. Now, different types of wild animals are there. We have given a glimpses of the different types of wild animals present in Bihar. Now, this wildlife means feral animals, and the different is the captive wild animals. It is divided into two. One is in free-ranging system, and other is in captivity, that is in zoo animals. Now, as the definition says, the feral animal is an animal of a domesticated species without direct human supervision or control. मतलब हम उसको wild animals कहने से अच्छा feral animal बोलते हैं, जो कि अब हमारे supervision में नहीं है. हम चाहेंगे कि वो खाना खा ले तो वो नहीं खाना खाएगा, वो सब कुछ अपने ऊपर करेगा. जबकि कैप्टिविटी में सब हमारे कंट्रोल में होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यू कैन टेक द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ जू एनिमल्स. अगर कोई एक एनिमल्स कैप्टिविटी में है तो खाना देने का समय, क्या खाना खाएगा, इट ऑल डिपेंड्स अपॉन द ऑनर और द अथॉरिटी दैट इज डीलिंग विद द जू एनिमल्स. सो दिस इज द difference between the free ranging animals and the animals present in captivity. Actually, just for a glimpses, I have brought here the different types of problem that wild animals face. So generally in animals, anthrax is very, very important. I will deal with each one, the bacterial, the viral, and the parasitic diseases. But just to sensitize you, all the diseases are present in wildlife, and mainly the zoonotic diseases are present in wildlife. But the prevalence and the study and the occurrence of the disease that has occurs in the vicinity और हमारे आसपास में जो हुआ है, मैंने उसका कुछ पिक्चोरियल रिप्रेजेंटेशन आपको जस्ट दिखाने के लिए लिए हैं. एटलीस्ट इतना दिमाग में होना चाहिए कि फ्रीक्वेंटली कौन से एनिमल ज़्यादा सस्पेक्टेबल हैं और कौन से डिजीज से. सो आप देख सकते हैं इसमें कि एलिफेंट है जो कि संबलपुर उड़ीसा में एंथ्रेक्स से सस्पेक्टेड था. So in India, the spotted dead wild elephant में सबसे ज़्यादा जो डेथ होने की जो संभावना होती है, it is due to anthrax is reported. Beside that, the rabies is one of the problem. As we know that rabies is present in two forms, and this you see in Gujarat also. This is just a study, rabies isolated from buffaloes, nilgais, and mangoes, and so many animals. So rabies is still one of the biggest problem in wildlife. Now, rabies was confirmed in 2019. This elephant died due to rabies, and me and Dr. Ramesh Tiwari and the team of Bihar Veterinary College and the zoo and the wildlife specialist of Bihar had a chance to diagnose a case of rabies in a live animal. So you see this, this was the elephant lying down, and we have to travel in Samastipur area where this animal was lied down. The message come from the central government also to examine that. Initially we suspect that some fecal problem is there because the animal was not defecating. So we have done endoscopy there, but throughout night we worked to recover the animal, but the animal was showing a little bit of jerky movement only, and it did not respond to any type of treatment. And by default, we have taken a corneal smear, and then after 1 and 2 days, it was confirmed a case of rabies. And you see कितना हालत मेरा और डॉक्टर तिवारी और हमारे टीम का खराब हुआ था जब हमें पता चला. And I was on tour. I left the Patna, and in midway of tour, I came to know that elephant was suffering from rabies on the corneal smear test. Then that brain was sent for final confirmation. It was finally confirmed that that animal died due to rabies. So you see how sometime we may come in contact with the rabid animal, and we have dealt with this animal. We have gone for gone for intravenous therapy. We come in contact with their mucous membrane. So it was a very, very tough situation for us. So this you see the elephant sometime may have been bitten by some of the rabid dog. वो elephant आप देखते हैं कि close vicinity में humans में भी रहता है. वो कभी अगर बाहर निकला होगा, कोई कुत्ता उसको काटा होगा, वो उसके सूंड में काट लेता है. बहुत सारे कहावत हैं हाथी पे और डॉग पे कि हाथी जब बाजार में चलता है तो कुछ ना कुछ उसको काट ही लेता है. So that animal died. So you see, just I have given a picture because this is a real story that we have seen, and we have presented this paper in a seminar also. So that dies due to rabies. So again, a biggest problem in wildlife is tuberculosis. and we know TB is one of the biggest zoonotic disease in human being as well as in wild animal, and most of the wild animals, especially in captivity also, they used to suffer from this tuberculosis. And this is examined once they die, and when you go for the postmortem examination, recently in our zoo also, some of the animals had this tuberculosis. So this is one of the biggest problem, because you know, as you know, there are two forms of tuberculosis. One is mycobacterium. Human being tuberculosis is mycobacterium. Anyone? Two forms of tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
And second one, that is more prevalent in our cattle. Bovis. Okay. So there are two forms of tuberculosis. Both are present in wildlife, but sometimes when in captivity, when they remain in close contact with the animal attendant, so there is a rule that both the animal attendant as well as the wild and zoo animals must be checked for tuberculosis, because sometimes there is a chance of contamination from human being to our wild animals also. So mycobacterium tuberculin that is present in human being is also present in the wild animals. So just this has to be kept in mind, that both type of tuberculosis are present in wild animals. Now, another very important disease, as we have seen, a case of thalidosis is one of the biggest problem in small ruminants as well as in our cattle, dairy cattle. So this Thalaria annulata was also confirmed from the deer captured from Beta in Bihar. So this disease is also present in our wild animals. Now, the next very important and the most widely talked disease in wildlife is trypanosomiasis. Anything that happens in wildlife, the wildlifers and some of the attendants, so that usko sarra ho gaya hoga, sir. And this is really, we have seen a case of trypanosomiasis in tiger, white tigers in our zoo also around 5 to 7 years ago. And that tiger, similarly, only we have taken a wet film smear, and it was beautifully examined the case of trypanosomiasis. And you see the range of animals. It affects the cattle, the buffalo, the sheep, the goat, pig, elephant, cheetal, jungle cat, mithun. It's a large number of species are affected by trypanosomes. So this is one of the biggest problem in wildlife. An outbreak of Sarra in tiger of Ranthambore National Park with a fatal case of report in male tiger. This was all reported previously, that Sarra is highly prevalent in our wildlife. Now, when we see the epidemiology of different disease, generally 60% of the pathogens are responsible of human disease are of wildlife origin. As we have already victim of this disease, they have originated, and we are facing the lockdown because of this wildlife disease. So in the recent time, in the coming year also, so this zoonotic disease will be one of the biggest problem, and most of the zoonotic diseases are suspected to arrive from our wildlife species. So this majority of these pathogens are coming from the wildlife. Now, you see, I have divided just, and we will come in detail the different wildlife diseases. Just I am enumerating the name of the disease here only as an introduction. You see, in case of bacterial disease, the tuberculosis, that generally affect the non-human primates, the elephants. This is very important. Just you have to keep in mind what type of species and what type of disease are more prevalent in that species. So non-human primates कौन से हो गए? अजीत?
Yes, sir.
Non-human primates क्या होंगे? क्या
monkey होंगे sir. Monkey हो गया, apes हो गया, monkey, apes.
Okay, ठीक है, चलिए. Then tuberculosis अभी मैंने बात किया. Elephants are highly susceptible. Rhinoceros are, and most of the artiodactylids are susceptible. Now coming to the next very important disease is leptospirosis. You know the leptospirosis is again a very important zoonotic disease. It affects almost all mammals. All mammals, and it affects rats, the raccoons, and you know the rats are generally responsible for the transmission because it is transmitted by the infected urine of the animals. So deer also. So these are some of the maintenance hosts. Now next is anthrax, again a very important zoonotic disease. It generally affects the herbivores, wild animals, and salmonellosis. Salmonellosis, it affects primates and cetaforms and columbiforms. And then is the clostridial infections and that affect the equids, the elephant, the birds, and small ruminants. So these are some of the bacterial disease. I will come one by one in the later classes, just to have a glimpses of this. So some of the viral disease again, the viral disease, the most important viral disease is canine distemper. It affects all canines and anaphyllites family. And the very important disease that is present in our small ruminant is PPR. And today I will talk about the spilling of the virus from main host to different type of hosts that are generally resistant to such type of infection. For example, the PPR is generally a disease of sheep and goat. We have already learned in microbiology or in preventive medicine class. But nowadays it has been seen that this PPR is spilling from the main host to the other wild animals. And this is the main danger because join कर लेंगे मेरा क्लास है इसके बाद कर लेंगे 5 मिनट हाँ 5 मिनट में पढ़ा लेते थोड़ा लेट हो गया एक सेमिनार है हमारे स्टूडेंट का हम थोड़ा रैपिड हो रहे हैं ठीक है ना जस्ट एक इंट्रोडक्शन है कोई दिक्कत so PPR again rabbits is a terrestrial carnivores is a reservoir host. Then ORF is a very important disease in wild ungulates. Then pox. Now different types of pox are present and our monkeys are highly susceptible to the pox. Okay, and some of the emerging diseases. KFD. What is KFD? Anyone?
Dinosaur forest disease.
Dinosaur forest disease.
Okay, so it generally infect non-human primates like monkeys and all. So this is just a glimpses of different diseases that are prevalent in wild species, and we will discuss. Now again, the protozoa, you see the trypanosomiasis, anaplasmosis, thalidosis, and babesiosis. Beside that, coccidiosis. So these are some of the important. I will talk about each disease and then on the what are the different wild animals that are highly susceptible to this in a different lecture. Now the biggest problem, why the so many zoonotic disease and why this wildlife disease is becoming more important. So you might have seen in any forest area there is a population residing in the vicinity of the forest. So the biggest problem of the spilling of the microorganism from the wild animals to the people living in the vicinity, that is on the outer skirt of the forest, because they have interactions. जो भी forest के vicinity पे रहते हैं, उसके fringes पे होते हैं, वो अपने resources के लिए wild jungle पे dependent होते हैं, और उनके animal उसमें जाते हैं, और wild animals sometimes intervene into them. Mostly the animals of the human being residing at the vicinity of the forest interest into the forest area. So they come in contact with the common water sources. वो पानी पीने के लिए, वो खाना घास खाने के लिए, वो different resources लेने के लिए, वो contaminate. So the biggest problem and the challenge we are going to face at the vicinity of the forest, जहाँ पे intervention होता है, उसका buffalo आया, मैं अभी फोटो दिखाऊंगा, उसके बफेलो आए, उसके सीप्स एंड गोट्स आए, वो एक ही जगह पे पानी पिया, वहां पे दूसरे वाइल्ड एनिमल्स आए एंड दे स्टार्ट इन्फेक्टिंग. फॉर एग्जांपल यू कैन टेक द एग्जांपल ऑफ एफएमडी स्प्रेड्स. So you can take the example of brucellosis. So these are some of the area where there is a chance of spilling of the organism from wild animals to the human being or to their domestic animals. You see, this is a picture of a I have taken just when I was visiting, when I was taking training in Sariska forest. You see some of these are the vicinity area of the forest, Sariska forest, and you see the common water space. Here, all the wild animals come for drinking of the water, and also the forest area people residing there, buffaloes and other species come for the drinking of water. So this is the area where there is a maximum contamination and spreading of the virus may occur. So there is interaction of human, livestock, and wildlife. So you see, generally the people living in and around the protected area, their cattle, buffalo, sheep, and goats are kept as extensive system. So more intervention of human and forest is required, and some share habitat. What happens? They share the habitat, common habitat of feeding and watering, and this is the area where there is occurrence chance of spilling of the virus. So you common watering and feeding, These are the species that are domesticated and their chance of spilling of the virus. So why there is a chance of spilling of virus? Because most of the wild animals, the loss of prey, more of wild animals and human conflicts are occurring and killing of the animals are occurring. So you see, just I have taken an example of this PPR. Sheep and this is a disease of sheep and goat, but now it is found in camel also, in cattle reported, it is reported in pigs, and it is reported in buffalo. So you see, they are leaving the main host, and they are the virus is spilling to the unnatural host. So these are hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
आवाज कट रहा है. So you see, this is the antelope. You know the antelopes are there, and there is a biggest outbreak of this PPR, and it has removed almost all the antelope, especially in the Gazella. In Gazella, the morbidity rate was around 51% from this PPR virus. You see, हम लोग बकरी पालते हैं, किसान बकरी पालते हैं, और एक बार आप सोचिए PPR आउटब्रेक उनमें होते रहता है शीप एंड गोट में. एक बार आपके वाइल्ड लाइफ में इंटरवेन कर जाएगा तो आपका जो सबसे बड़ा रूमिनेंट स्पीसीज है जो हर्बीवोर्स वाइल्ड में है, फॉर एग्जांपल डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ एंटीलोप्स वी हैव इन आवर फॉरेस्ट, इफ दे इन्फेक्ट देम, so you will see the whole herbivores population may be wiped out. So this will pose a very important ecological problem, because once the herbivores of the forest is removed, then the animal dependent on these herbivores for their food, for example, the different types of carnivores, they are affected. So the whole ecosystem get degraded, and there is a decrease in the population of different wildlife species. So these are the critically endangered species, and there is a great outbreak of fatality due to PPR virus in the Saiga antelope. Saiga is one of the regions in the world where these are generally found, and due to the PPR, the whole Saiga areas were devastated by this PPR transmission. So there are different mode of transmission of this direct contact, or by respiratory route, or by oral route and conjunctival. I will not include the PPR transmission, but cattle can be infected with PPR, but it is unable to transmit the disease to the another host. So these are some of the very important points, how this PPR virus is present in the forest area, because they survive in pillated form for 11 to 14 weeks in pillet form. Just you see the different type of fishes we have talked for the identification of this identification of the species. So as you see, if the pellets may contain the virus, it may infect to any other species. Now next is the aerosol mechanism. When they go for watering and feeding, and when they come across closer to each other, it may infect up to 10 meters. So these are the chance. And you see in 216 Mongolian Saiga antelope, heavy mortality of this Saiga antelope occurs due to this PPR virus. And 1.5 million sheep and goats seasonally graze in the Saiga region. So this is the national statistical data was there. So it has eradicated the whole Saiga forest. So these are some of the economic importance of PPR. I will not come across. Just I am giving you a look. You see again a common watering and feeding place where they can act as a transmission. You see our domestic animal, when they enter into the forest area for common feeding and watering, they may infect our wild animals. You see this, take the example of a rhinoceros. You can transmit it by FMD, may transmit it by tuberculosis. So human wildlife interface is very important in the coming year. Not only the wild disease, but the diseases that is present in our domestic animal can occur in other wild animals. You see the domesticated dogs and wild canids and raccoons, although canine distemper, we have already learned that it's a disease of generally of canids, but you see the spilling of this virus. You see this is spilling into the monkey. More than 4,500 monkey died due to the spilling of this CD virus. So you see how this virus is going to pose this a great problem in the coming year. And in 2007, 56 Asiatic lion in the Western India had antibodies against canine distemper virus. So you see how this our domesticated animals is responsible for the outbreak of the disease in the wildlife also. So now coming to the diagnosis, it is as difficult as we can think of. It is very easy to think, oh, which animal is suffering, might be suffering from tuberculosis, might be suffering from canine distemper, but it's almost impossible to go for a single animal treatment and diagnosis. हमको तब पता चलता है जब वो कोई एनिमल मरा हुआ होता है, जब उसका otherwise single animal treatment is very difficult. Only you have to take care of the control. But sometimes if some outbreak is there, आपको कब बुलाया